Hi there. Welcome to Reddit Confessions. This isn't one of those stories where I tell you how I caught her red-handed or how I went full alpha and burned her clothes in the yard. No, this story starts with a cardboard box and ends with a version of me I barely recognize. Let me tell you exactly how it happened. Every pathetic, ridiculous, humiliating detail. It all started on a Monday. Not a special Monday. Not an anniversary. Not a birthday. Not even a long weekend. Just a regular, slightly overcooked Monday. I came home from work, kicked off my boots, and found a package on the kitchen table. No wrapping, just a ribbon, the kind you get from those $2 gift bins at the pharmacy. There was a sticky note on it. Her handwriting. Slanted. Sharp. Like always. It read, "Thought you could use this." I opened it. It was a book. How to Be a Real Man. At first, I stood there thinking, okay, this is a joke. This has to be a joke. Except it wasn't. There was no card. No hidden punchline. No winky face. Just 246 pages of bold black letters judging me before I even turned the first page. She wasn't home yet, so I had a solid hour to walk circles around the kitchen island trying not to lose my mind. And when she finally walked in, calm, casual, chewing gum like it was the most normal day in the world, I asked her, "What is this?" She didn't hesitate. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "It's a book. I figured maybe you'd learn something." No smirk. No humor. Just that. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the silence in her tone. Maybe it was the months of feeling like a roommate in my own marriage. But I walked straight to the garage, grabbed an old Amazon box, came back, and slid it across the counter to her. "Here," I said. "If you know what a real man looks like, go find one." And without saying a word, she took the box and started packing. Not angrily. Not with fury or rage. Just with clarity. Like she'd been waiting for me to say that. She didn't take everything. Just some clothes, a charger, her skincare stuff, and the spare car key. Before she left, she stood by the door, holding the box like it was a trophy, and said, 2 weeks. That's all I need." And then gone. That was 13 days ago. And I've spent every day since then spiraling like a used-up twist tie. No calls. No texts. No cryptic Instagram quotes. Just silence. Until this morning. I walked out to the porch to grab the mail, and there it was, a new box. Same dimensions. Same brown cardboard. But this one was addressed to me. My name, in her handwriting. No return label. Inside, a photo. One single photo. Her. Sitting on a hotel bed. Smiling. Next to a man I didn't recognize. And in the corner of the frame, my book. Still untouched. Still unopened. Like the joke was never about me being a real man. It was about seeing if I'd notice when she stopped pretending I already was one. The photo didn't just shake me. It dismantled me. There she was, Callie, sitting cross-legged on a hotel bed I didn't recognize, dressed in one of her "I'm just chilling" outfits, the same oversized tee she used to steal from my drawer. Except now she wasn't smiling at me. She was smiling at someone else. A man I'd never seen before. He wasn't holding her, but he didn't need to. The way her knee touched his leg said more than 100 hugs ever could. I sat on the porch for almost an hour, holding that photo like it might catch fire. My coffee went cold. The neighbor's dog barked. My phone buzzed twice. None of it mattered. Time stopped moving for me. Eventually, I went back inside, closed the door, and just sat on the floor. It was the first time I realized she might not come back. Not as my wife. Not as someone who loved me. Maybe not at all. I checked the envelope again. No message. No explanation. Just the photo, and the old cardboard box sitting at the foot of the hotel bed in the background. The one I gave her the night she walked out. What did that mean? Was she mocking me? Was it some twisted proof that she actually took me up on the offer and went hunting for this so-called real man? Or was she trying to say something deeper, like she'd finally found what I could never be? I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. I stared at my own reflection in the microwave door. Puffy eyes. Hair a mess. Wrinkled t-shirt. I didn't look like a husband. I looked like a man who had no idea how he got here. That evening, I did something stupid. I opened the book. Chapter 1. Accountability. Own your weaknesses. That hit me harder than I expected. Because the truth is, I have been weak. Not in the way she meant. Not physically or emotionally, but passively. I let our marriage die in slow motion. I ignored the cold dinners, the distant looks, the way she flinched when I reached for her hand in public. I chalked it up to stress. Routine. Hormones. Anything but what it actually was, disinterest. And now? Now she's probably halfway through a bottle of white wine in some overpriced Airbnb with a guy who doesn't talk about printer ink over dinner. I should have seen it coming. It wasn't just the book. There were signs long before that, subtle little digs. Do you even try anymore? You used to surprise me. It's like you've stopped showing up. And I always brushed it off like she was having a rough day. Turns out, we were. All of them. And now that she's gone, the silence in this house is like a punishment I never expected. It doesn't just echo. It accuses. I keep replaying that moment in my head. Me handing her the box, puffed up with self-righteousness, thinking I was making some powerful statement. But looking back, she didn't see it as a challenge. She saw it as permission. And she took it. Tomorrow's day 14. The exact day she said she'd be back. But after that photo, I don't know what's coming through that door. And I don't know if I'm ready for it. Day 14 started with silence. Not peaceful silence. Not the kind that makes you want to sip tea and watch the clouds. This was the kind that makes your chest feel like it's sinking. The kind where every sound, the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, feels louder because something bigger is missing. I barely slept the night before. I kept imagining the doors swinging open and her walking in with some smug, glowing, I found him energy. Or worse, not coming back at all and leaving me with a lifetime of questions and half-used shampoo bottles. Either scenario was unbearable, and both played on a loop in my head like a cruel highlight reel. Around 3 p.m., I heard tires on the gravel. My heart practically leapt out of my throat. I rushed to the window, then immediately ducked down like some cartoon idiot. But when I peeked again, I saw it. Her silver Prius. Same dent on the rear bumper. Same faded bumper sticker that said, human, not a robot. Except this time, there were two people in the car. She was in the passenger seat. And some guy, tall, dark hair, sunglasses, was behind the wheel. They didn't get out right away. They just sat there talking. Or maybe not talking. I couldn't see their mouths clearly. But I could see her face. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't crying. She was comfortable. Like she belonged next to him. I backed away from the window and nearly tripped over a shoe. I must have stood in the hallway for 10 minutes, just breathing and unbreathing, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do. Was this it? Was she coming back to pack the rest of her things? Was I supposed to pretend I was fine with all this? The doorbell rang. Not a knock. Not a hey, I'm home. A doorbell. That detail gutted me. I opened the door, and there she was. Callie. Tan. Relaxed. Different in a way I couldn't quite explain. Like someone who'd been let out of a cage and realized they liked the open air better. Hey, she said, like we were neighbors. Can we talk? I stared at her for a second too long, then stepped aside and let her in. The guy stayed in the car, engine running. She noticed me glancing out the window and said, That's Logan. Don't worry, he's not staying. Don't worry? We sat at the kitchen table. Same place she gave me that book 2 weeks ago. She didn't waste time. I don't want to play games, she said. I needed space to figure out what I was really missing. And I found it. Or maybe I remembered it. I didn't say anything. I was scared my voice would crack. Or I'd cry. Or both. She kept going. I'm not here to blame you. You're not a bad person, Gerald. You were just never present. Like emotionally. For years. It was like living with a nice, tired ghost. That one hit deep. I kept waiting for you to wake up. To say something that made me feel like your wife again. But all you ever gave me was silence. Or weird guilt. Or printer facts. Printer facts. God. Then she reached into her purse and slid over a folded piece of paper. It was a separation agreement. Not a divorce yet. Just legal space. But the message was clear. I don't want this anymore. She didn't cry. I didn't cry. We just sat there, two people who used to be a team, now acting like strangers finalizing a business transaction. When she stood up to leave, she paused at the doorway and said, You're going to be okay, but I can't wait around for you to become someone you were never trying to be. And then she walked out, back into that Prius, back into his car, back into a life that clearly didn't include me anymore. I closed the door slowly, hands shaking, and sat back down at the table. The book was still there, open to chapter 4. Respect is earned when you're willing to lose. I lost, but I don't know if I earned a damn thing. You'd think signing a separation agreement would be the end of it. The final gut punch. The moment you finally let go of whatever hope was hanging on by a thread. But no, that wasn't my ending. Not even close. It turns out, The worst part of a breakup isn't the goodbye. It's what you find after they've already walked away. That evening, I just sat there for hours. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I didn't even scroll my phone. I just sat in that chair at the kitchen table, staring at the last spot where she stood. My brain kept echoing her words like some kind of punishment on repeat. You were never present. A nice, tired ghost. But around 11 p.m., I stood up. Not because I had some plan. Just because my legs had fallen asleep. I started walking around the house like I was looking for something to anchor myself to. Something she left behind that might still smell like her, or feel like us. And that's when I opened the guest room closet. I don't know why. I hadn't been in there in months. But something in me, curiosity, heartbreak, plain desperation, told me to look. Tucked in the back corner was a shoebox. No lid. No labels. Just sitting there. Bare. Forgotten. Or maybe hidden. I pulled it out, sat cross-legged on the floor, and stared at it for a moment. Then I reached in. The first thing I pulled out was a receipt, folded neatly in half. It was from a hotel. Not just a hotel, the hotel. The same one from the photo she sent. Same name, same address. Dated 4 days before she returned. But what really set me off was the name on the receipt. It wasn't her name. It was mine. Gerald Thomas. I blinked, confused, thinking maybe I was losing it. Why would she book a hotel under my name? I dug further. There was more. A printed email thread, pages of it, between her and someone named Logan Whitman. My stomach turned when I realized this was the same guy who drove her home. The emails went back almost 6 months. It started innocently enough. Jokes, a few flirtatious lines, memes. But then it shifted. You make me feel seen. Sometimes I wonder how my life ended up so small. I wish you were beside me when I wake up. And then came the one that made me physically recoil. He thinks the book was a suggestion. Poor guy. He still doesn't get it's already over. I dropped the pages. Literally dropped them. My fingers went numb. So this wasn't a crisis. It wasn't a confused woman trying to find herself. This was premeditated. She'd been crafting her exit like a novelist plotting the final twist in a story she couldn't wait to end. And the book? It wasn't a cry for help. It was the first chapter in my humiliation. I sat on the floor in that dim guest room, surrounded by scraps of her betrayal, trying to piece together what I did wrong. What made me so easy to leave. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel angry. I felt replaced. And the worst part? She didn't even bother to cover her tracks. It's like she wanted me to find it all. Like she needed me to understand that she'd already moved on, months before I handed her that box. I stared at the final email again, the one she sent 3 nights ago. He won't fight. He never does. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him. He always folds. And yeah, she was right. I folded. Because I thought that's what love was, bending until you break just to keep the peace. But maybe peace was never what she wanted. Maybe she wanted more than I ever could give. I barely slept after finding that shoebox. It felt like I was living in a story I didn't write. Or worse, one where I was the plot twist no one cared about. The email from Callie, he always folds, kept looping through my head like a broken record. I started thinking about how many decisions in our marriage I'd let her make. Where we lived. What vacations we took. What color the curtains were. And yeah, I thought I was being supportive. Easygoing. The good guy. Turns out, to her, I was just easy. But one thing didn't sit right. The hotel receipt. The fact that it was under my name. That detail felt sloppy, careless, but also deliberate. Which brings me to something I haven't admitted here yet. Logan wasn't just some stranger. His name had rung a bell for a reason. It took me a minute to place him, but when I did, it felt like the air was sucked from the room. Logan Whitman was Callie's ex. Yeah, the ex. The one before me. The guy she almost married in her 20s, but swore was a chapter long closed. I remember the one time she mentioned him. We were at a diner, she was drinking iced tea, and she casually said, I ran into Logan once last year. He looked tired. I think he peaked early. And now? Apparently, he had unpeaked right into my marriage. I didn't have Logan's number, but I had something better, the email chain. Buried in the pages was a reservation confirmation she forwarded him. And it had something else, his work email signature. Some boutique marketing firm downtown. So I did something pathetic. I called, and I asked for him. I told the receptionist my name and said it was personal. She hesitated, but eventually patched me through. Logan Whitman speaking. I froze for a second, then forced the words out. Hey, It's Gerald. Callie's. I stopped myself. Her husband. For now. There was a pause. Then a sigh. I figured this might happen, he said. Look, man, I don't want drama. This is between you and Callie. No, I said. It's not. See, you stayed out of it when you were the past. But you stepped back in. You participated. So now it's also about you. Another pause. I could hear him shifting in his chair. She came to me, he said. Not the other way around. Of course she did. That's the kind of thing someone like Logan would say. Someone who always believed the world simply happened to him, never that he shaped it. She was hurt, he added. She told me you weren't there. Emotionally. Said she felt like a stranger in her own house. She was a stranger, I snapped. Because she stopped talking. She stopped trying. And I was too stupid to push. He went quiet for a long time. I thought he might hang up. Instead, he said something that shifted the ground beneath me. She told me she never stopped loving you. She just stopped recognizing you. That stung. Because deep down I got it. Somewhere between late-night shifts, burnout, and thinking love was maintenance-free once the papers were signed, I had changed. I became muted. Predictable. Background noise. But then Logan added something I'll never forget. She also said you gave her the box hoping she'd walk. That you were testing her. Hoping she'd prove you wrong. But she didn't. I sat there, phone pressed against my ear, throat dry, because the awful part was, he was right. I did hope. I hoped she'd laugh. Call me dramatic. Say, you're stuck with me, idiot. But instead she packed. Calmly. Like she was just waiting for permission. I asked him one final thing. Are you too serious? He hesitated. We're figuring things out. Which is code for, she's not sure you're gone yet. And honestly, neither was I. After the call with Logan, I should have felt closure, or at least some degree of understanding. But instead, I felt something colder, suspicion. A heavy, crawling sense that there was still more I didn't know. Like the truth wasn't finished with me yet. And I was right. I don't consider myself a snoop. I've never gone through her texts, never read her emails, never followed her around. I always thought respect meant trusting blindly. But now, I wasn't sure if that was wisdom or just cowardice dressed up in morals. The next day, I went into our bedroom, what used to be our room, and opened the drawer on her side of the bed. I hadn't touched it since she left. It still smelled faintly like lavender and her night lotion. Inside, buried under a few receipts and loose earrings, was a small maroon notebook. One of those soft-cover journals with a frayed elastic strap. I froze. I knew I shouldn't read it. But I also knew if I didn't, I'd stay stuck in this ghost version of my own life, repeating questions with no answers. So I opened it. At first, it was nothing. Grocery lists. Workout plans. Some quotes she must have copied from a podcast. Then, maybe 30 pages in, I found what I didn't know I was looking for. A heading, scrawled in bold ink. When I started slipping away, I read the first sentence and felt my stomach clench. It wasn't the book. It wasn't Logan. It wasn't even the silence. It was the conversation with someone who shouldn't have known what was missing between us. I blinked. Read it again. What? I kept reading. We were at Melanie's baby shower. I hadn't talked about Gerald in months, not in detail. But then Chris asked me, do you even like the guy anymore? Or are you just afraid of starting over? Chris, my best friend, my college roommate, the guy who helped me move that exact dresser into our bedroom 5 years ago. The same guy who sat across from me last month, sipping whiskey and telling me to hang in there because marriage goes through seasons. She kept writing. I laughed it off, but the seed was planted. And every time Gerald sat on the couch staring at his phone, or got too quiet at dinner, or said, I'm just tired, that question came back louder. Do you even like him anymore? It wasn't Logan. It wasn't me. It was Chris who cracked the door open. I slammed the journal shut. My ears were ringing. My palms were sweating. I couldn't breathe properly. I felt betrayed all over again. But this time, not just by Callie. Why would Chris say something like that to my wife? Why would he insert himself into our private cracks and widen them like a crowbar? And then I remembered something else. Something I had ignored at the time. 3 months ago, Chris and Callie had lunch together. I was supposed to go too, but I got stuck fixing a scanner jam at work. When I got home and asked how it went, she just said, it was good. He's easy to talk to. Easy to talk to. Right. The next morning, I called him. No small talk. I read her journal. I said, your name was in it. Silence. I heard him exhale through his nose. like he'd been holding in a truth that was about to ruin us both. Then he said something that nearly dropped me to my knees. I didn't think she'd tell you. But yeah, I said it. Because she looked miserable, and you weren't doing anything. You were just letting her rot. I clenched the phone so tight I thought it might crack. I didn't need you to fix my marriage, Chris. I needed you to respect it. He didn't apologize. He didn't even sound guilty. She didn't need a husband, Gerald. She needed a mirror. I just held one up. And that was it. That was the moment I realized how alone I really was. My wife had left. My best friend had pushed her. And I had been sleepwalking through the collapse, thinking I was being supportive when really I was just absent. Not angry. Not cruel. Just gone, while still physically there. And that was somehow worse. So now I sit in a house that doesn't feel like mine, rereading a journal that wasn't meant for me, grieving a marriage I thought I was fighting for, but maybe I was only ever clinging to its echo. It took me 3 full days to work up the nerve to ask Callie to meet. Not to beg her to come back. Not to make some grand gesture or perform a last-ditch confession of love. I wasn't even sure what I needed to say. I just knew I couldn't end this with silence. Not after what I found in her journal. Not after what Chris said. I needed answers. And maybe, in some way, I didn't want to admit, I needed permission to let go of her without feeling like the villain in my own story. I texted her. Can we meet? One conversation. No drama. Just closure. She replied within the hour. Okay. Nothing more. Just okay. We met at a little park near her sister's condo, neutral ground. I got there early and sat on a cold bench near the fountain. It was almost noon, and everything felt wrong. The world was too bright for what I was about to say. Birds chirping, kids laughing in the distance. Like no one else knew this moment would quietly wreck me for good. She arrived exactly on time. She looked the same, but different. More polished. Her hair done in a way she rarely bothered with before. A faint trace of perfume I didn't recognize. A new purse, new shoes. It was subtle, but it hit me hard. She wasn't just with someone else. She was becoming someone else. She sat beside me, arms folded. So, I reached into my coat and handed her the journal. She blinked. Where did you find this? In the guest room closet. You hid it, but not that well. She stared at it in silence for a moment. Then looked at me. You read it? I nodded. I read everything. There was a long pause between us. That kind of pause where time slows and the next words could either shatter or salvage what's left of a life. I wasn't going to, I added. But after the photo, after the silence, I needed to understand. She leaned back, crossed one leg over the other, and said softly, What do you want to know? I almost asked a dozen things. Why Logan? Why the book? Why didn't she talk to me before deciding it was over? But instead, what came out of my mouth was, Why did you let him in? She knew who I meant. Chris. Her face twisted, not in guilt, but something closer to regret. Not for the choice itself, but maybe for what it cost. Because he asked me a question you never did, she said. He noticed I was unhappy. He didn't try to fix me, he just saw me. That stung. A lot more than I expected. I thought I was giving you space, I said, trying to steady my voice. I thought I was letting you come to me when you were ready. You weren't giving me space, Gerald. You were disappearing, one quiet day at a time. I looked away. It wasn't anger I felt, it was defeat. A slow, suffocating wave of realization that maybe I really had been asleep for years, and she'd been screaming for help in a whisper I refused to hear. But then, she said something I didn't see coming. I never wanted to leave you. I wanted you to show up. I waited. I waited so long I forgot what I was even waiting for. And by the time Logan came back into my life, it felt like a decision had already been made. Not by me, by us. Or maybe by you, when you stopped asking who I was becoming. I felt tears coming, but I blinked hard and swallowed them back. So that box, I said, when I handed it to you, was that it for you? She smiled, just barely. No, that was your way of asking me to stay. You didn't say it directly. You never did. But I knew what you meant. Then why'd you leave? Because I was done trying to translate your silence. That broke something in me. We sat in silence for a while after that. A different kind of silence. One filled with every word we never said when it still might have mattered. Finally, I stood up. I'm not mad at you, I said. I'm mad at myself for thinking I could coast through love like it was something on autopilot. She looked up at me, eyes soft but guarded. It wasn't all your fault, Gerald. I broke things too. I just stopped believing you'd come back. And with that, I walked away. No hug, no goodbye kiss, no tearful promises. Just two people who loved each other once, watching that love turn into a closed chapter on a park bench. But as I walked to my car, something shifted inside me. For the first time in a long time, I felt awake. Wounded, yes. Heartbroken, absolutely. But wide-eyed and painfully aware of the role I played in losing her. And maybe that's what it means to grow up, finally realizing that silence isn't peace, and passivity isn't kindness. Sometimes love isn't lost in a scream. It's lost in the moments when we say nothing. It's been 3 months since that final conversation with Callie. I remember walking away from that park feeling like I had just stepped out of someone else's life. Like I had finally returned to my body after drifting in someone else's shadow. The pain was still there, sure, but something else had started to grow beneath it. Clarity. I won't lie, the first few weeks were rough. I'd hear a song and break down in the car. I couldn't cook without thinking of how she used to steal bites off the cutting board. I missed the quiet hum of her in the house. Even the arguments. At least then, we were engaged. Connected. Now, I was just a man in an echo chamber of what used to be. But here's the thing. Pain doesn't stay sharp forever. Eventually, it becomes a tool, if you're willing to pick it up. I started doing things I had stopped doing years ago. I joined a local cycling group, not because I wanted to race, but because I needed to breathe again, really breathe. I signed up for a public speaking class, something I'd always avoided out of fear. I even started journaling, which sounds ridiculous coming from the guy who once mocked gratitude lists. But most of all, I stopped blaming myself entirely. I stopped seeing myself as this helpless, ghost-like husband who drove her away. Because while I made mistakes, real ones, I also showed up in ways she never acknowledged. I loved her. I tried. I was there, even if imperfectly. And that counts for something. The truth is, Callie leaving didn't destroy me. It woke me up. I don't hate her. I don't hate Logan. And surprisingly, I've even let go of the bitterness I felt toward Chris. What happened was complicated, messy, human. And I've realized that forgiveness isn't about letting others off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from carrying the weight of what they did. Last week, I walked into a bookstore. Yeah, a real one. And saw a copy of How to Be a Real Man on the shelf. I picked it up, smiled, and quietly put it back. Because I don't need a book to tell me who I am anymore. I'm not perfect. I still talk too much about toner cartridges. I still overthink small conversations. I still feel things way too deeply. But for the first time in a long time, I feel whole, even if I'm healing in pieces. And maybe that's the win. Not getting her back. Not proving her wrong. Just becoming someone I actually recognize when I look in the mirror. Thanks for sticking with me through this whole story. If you've ever had a moment that changed you, a breakup, a betrayal, a wake-up call, I'd love to hear about it. Drop it in the comments. This has been Reddit Confessions. Thanks for listening. Stay honest. Stay growing. And remember, sometimes, losing the wrong person helps you finally become the right one.